The barn door creaked open just enough for Samuel Kincaid to notice the faint sliver of moonlight cutting through the darkness, and his hand instinctively moved to the revolver at his hip before he heard the soft, rhythmic breathing coming from the hay loft above. Samuel had returned to his ranch outside Beaver, Utah late that evening in October of 1876, exhausted from 3 days of driving cattle to the rail station in Salt Lake City. The journey had been grueling, the weather unforgiving, and all he wanted was to check on his horses and collapse into bed. But something was different tonight. Someone was in his barn. He climbed the wooden ladder slowly, each rung groaning under his weight despite his careful movements. The breathing grew clearer, accompanied now by the subtle rustle of hay. When his head cleared the loft floor, he saw her. A woman lay curled in the corner, buried deep in the loose hay as if trying to disappear into it. Dark hair spilled across the golden stalks, and even in sleep, her face held tension. Her clothes were dusty and worn, a simple dress that had seen better days, and her boots were caked with dried mud. She clutched a small cloth bundle to her chest like it contained everything she owned in the world. Samuel cleared his throat, not wanting to startle her too badly, but needing to understand why a stranger was sleeping in his barn. Her eyes flew open instantly, wide and alert, the reaction of someone who had learned to wake ready to run. "Easy now," Samuel said, keeping his voice low and calm. "This is my property. You mind telling me what you're doing here?" The woman sat up quickly, hay cascading off her shoulders. In the dim light filtering through the loft window, he could see her better now. She was young, probably in her early 20s, with striking features despite the dirt smudging her cheeks. Her eyes held a wariness that spoke of hard experiences. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice hoarse as if she had been crying or had not had water in some time. "I did not mean to trespass. I will leave at dawn." There was something in the way she said it, with such quiet resignation, that made Samuel pause. He had been prepared to send her on her way immediately, but instead he found himself asking, "Where are you headed?" She looked away, her fingers tightening on the bundle. "Anywhere that is not here." Running from something, her jaw clenched. "Someone." Samuel studied her for a long moment. He was 30 years old, had lived in Utah territory since he was a boy, and had seen enough of life to recognize desperation when he saw it. He also knew that a woman alone on the frontier faced dangers that could break even the strongest spirit. "You hungry?" he asked. The question seemed to catch her off guard. She met his eyes again, searching his face as if trying to determine whether this was a trap. Finally, she nodded. "Come on down to the house. I will fix you something to eat and you can tell me your story. Then we will figure out what to do." "I told you I will leave at dawn," she repeated, but there was less conviction in her voice this time. "Dawn is hours away," Samuel said. "No sense in you starving until then." He descended the ladder and waited at the bottom, half expecting her not to follow. But after a moment, he heard the creak of wood as she climbed down. Up close, he could see she was taller than he had first thought, with a lean build that suggested she had missed more than a few meals recently. They walked across the moonlit yard to his house, a modest structure he had built himself over the course of 2 years. It was not much, just 3 rooms and a porch, but it was solid and warm and his. Inside, Samuel lit the oil lamps while the woman stood uncertainly near the door, as if ready to bolt at any moment. He stoked the fire in the stove and pulled out the cornbread and beef he had prepared before his cattle drive. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the table. She sat, but perched on the edge of the chair, her bundle still clutched against her. Samuel set a plate in front of her and watched as she stared at it for a moment before setting down her belongings and eating with barely controlled urgency. He poured her water from the pitcher and waited until she had taken several long drinks before he spoke again. "I'm Samuel Kincaid. This is my ranch, such as it is. Been working it for about 5 years now." She swallowed another bite and seemed to be debating how much to tell him. "Theresa Zimmerman," she said finally. "I appreciate the food, but I do not want to bring trouble to your door." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind with guns and bad intentions," she said, meeting his eyes directly. "I ran away from a man in Salt Lake City. He thinks he owns me. He will be looking." Samuel leaned back in his chair. "Husband?" "No," she said, and something dark flickered across her face. "He wanted to be. I worked in his hotel, cleaning rooms. When I refused his proposals, he became less interested in proposing and more interested in taking what he wanted. I fought him off and ran. That was 4 days ago. You walked all the way from Salt Lake City. I managed to buy passage on a freight wagon for part of the way with the little money I had saved. The driver let me off at the crossroads near here. I have been walking since yesterday morning." Samuel absorbed this information. Salt Lake City was more than 200 miles north. The fact that she had made it this far spoke to either remarkable determination or sheer desperation, likely both. "This man," Samuel said, "he is the type to chase you this far." "Marcus Pemberton is the type who does not like being told no," Theresa said. "He has money and connections. If he wants to find me, he will try." "Well, he will have a hard time of it. Beaver is not exactly on the main routes, and my ranch is a few miles outside town. If you have been careful about covering your tracks, he might lose the trail entirely." She shook her head. "I cannot ask you to help me. You have already been kinder than you needed to be. At dawn I will go, and you can forget you ever saw me." "And go where exactly?" "You have no money, no horse, and winter is coming. You would not make it to the next settlement before the snow starts." "That is my problem, not yours." Samuel stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark landscape. His ranch was isolated, which had always suited him fine. After the war and everything that came after, he had wanted nothing more than to be left alone to work his land and raise his cattle. But looking at this woman who had walked hundreds of miles to escape a man who would not take no for an answer, he felt something stir in him that had been dormant for years. "I could use some help around here," he said, turning back to her. "My last ranch hand left 2 months ago to try his luck in the silver mines. If you are willing to work, you can stay on. I will pay you fair wages, and you will have a safe place to sleep. There is a small bunkhouse out back. It is not much, but it is dry and has a stove." Theresa stared at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. "You would do that? For a stranger?" "I would do that for someone who needs help," Samuel said. "And like I said, I genuinely do need an extra pair of hands. Winter is coming and there is a lot to do to get ready. Can you cook?" "Yes." "Can you handle livestock?" "I grew up on a farm in Colorado before my parents died. I know my way around horses and cattle." "Then we have a deal if you want it. You work for me, earn your keep, and save up enough money to start fresh somewhere else when spring comes. Or stay longer if you prefer. Your choice." She studied him with those wary eyes, and he could see her mind working through all the possible angles, looking for the catch. He did not blame her. In his experience, offers that seemed too good to be true usually were. "Why would you trust me?" she asked. "I could rob you blind and disappear in the night." "Could you?" Samuel asked with a slight smile. "I sleep light and I am a good shot, but more importantly, you do not strike me as the thieving type. You strike me as someone who has been dealt a rough hand and is trying to survive it. And you are certain you are not expecting anything else in return?" The question was direct, her gaze unflinching. Samuel understood what she was really asking. "I am certain. You would have your own space, your own lock on the door." You would be an employee, nothing more unless you ever decided you wanted something different, and that would be entirely your choice. I am not that kind of man. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. Then I accept. Thank you, Mr. Kincaid. Samuel is fine. We will be working together. No need for formalities. Finish eating and I will show you to the bunkhouse. Tomorrow we will get you settled properly. After Theresa had eaten her fill, Samuel lit a lantern and led her outside to the small structure behind the main house. It was simple but sturdy, with a bed, a stove, a table and chair, and a trunk for storing belongings. He had built it himself when he first thought about hiring regular help. There are blankets in the trunk, he said, and I will bring you some supplies in the morning. For now, get some rest. Dawn comes early around here. Samuel, she said as he turned to leave. He looked back at her. Thank you, I mean it. I was not sure I would survive another night out there. You are safe here, he said. I give you my word on that. As he walked back to his house, Samuel wondered what he had just gotten himself into. He was not lying about needing help, but he also knew that harboring a woman fleeing from a wealthy man could bring complications he did not need. Still, when he thought about turning her away to face the elements and whoever might be pursuing her, he knew he had made the right choice. The next morning, Samuel woke before sunrise as always. He dressed, splashed cold water on his face, and stepped outside into the crisp October air. Smoke was already rising from the bunkhouse chimney, which surprised him. He had expected Theresa to sleep late after her ordeal. When he knocked on the bunkhouse door, she opened it immediately, already dressed and looking far more alert than anyone had a right to be at this hour. "Good morning," she said. "I hope I did not use too much wood for the fire. I was not sure what the protocols were." "Use what you need," Samuel said. "Come up to the house and I will make breakfast. Then I will show you around and we can figure out what needs doing first." Over a breakfast of eggs, bacon, and coffee, Samuel outlined the work that needed to be done before winter set in. There was hay to bring in, fences to mend, the roof of the barn needed patching in a few places, and the livestock needed to be moved to the winter pastures. "I will do whatever you need," Theresa said. "I am not afraid of hard work." She proved it over the following days. Theresa attacked every task with a fierce determination that impressed Samuel. She was up before dawn and worked until after dark, learning the routines of the ranch quickly and never complaining about the labor. She was good with the horses, gentle but firm, and the cattle did not spook around her the way they sometimes did with strangers. In the evenings, she would cook dinner for both of them, insisting it was easier to make one large meal than two separate ones. Samuel found himself looking forward to those dinners more than he wanted to admit. Theresa was not overly talkative, but when she did speak, she was thoughtful and often funny in a dry, understated way. 3 weeks after Theresa arrived, Samuel rode into Beaver to pick up supplies and check if there was any mail. The town was small, just a handful of buildings clustered around the main street, but it had everything a rancher needed: a general store, a blacksmith, a saloon, and a small church. While the store clerk was gathering his order, Samuel noticed a man he did not recognize standing near the door, watching the street with the focused attention of someone looking for something specific. He was well dressed by frontier standards, with expensive boots and a coat that looked like it had come from back east. "Help you with something?" Samuel asked. The man turned, his eyes cold and assessing. "Maybe. I am looking for someone. A woman, dark hair, mid-20s. She might have come through here recently." Samuel kept his expression neutral. "Lots of people come through. What is your interest in her?" "She is my fiancée," the man said smoothly. "She had a nervous spell and ran off. Her family is very worried. I am Marcus Pemberton from Salt Lake City. Perhaps you have heard of me." "Cannot say that I have," Samuel lied. "And I have not seen anyone matching that description. You might try asking at the boarding house." Pemberton's eyes narrowed slightly. "I will do that. If you do happen to see her, there is a reward for information leading to her return. She is not well and needs help." Samuel met his gaze steadily. "If I see anyone in distress, I will be sure they get the help they need." He finished his business at the store and rode back to the ranch faster than usual. When he arrived, Theresa was in the barn, brushing down one of the horses. She looked up as he entered and immediately noticed his expression. "What is wrong?" "Marcus Pemberton is in town," Samuel said. "He is telling people you are his fiancée and that you are mentally unwell." The color drained from Theresa's face. "He found me. He is asking around, but I did not give you away. I do not think anyone in town knows you are here. Most folks do not pay much attention to my comings and goings. But we need to be careful. If he starts searching ranches outside town, he will eventually make his way here." Theresa set down the brush with shaking hands. "I should leave. I cannot put you in danger." "You are not going anywhere," Samuel said firmly. "If Pemberton is telling people you are mentally unstable, he is setting up a narrative where anything you say will be dismissed. That is calculated and cruel. You are staying here where you are safe. But what if he comes here? Then he will find a woman working on my ranch of her own free will. You are over 18, you have every right to choose where you work and live. If he tries to force you to do anything, he will have to go through me." She looked at him with something like wonder. "You would stand against him. He has money, he has influence. He could make a lot of trouble for you." "Let him try," Samuel said. "This is my land and you are under my protection. That means something out here." For the first time since he had met her, Theresa's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back quickly, but not before Samuel saw them. "I do not know why you are being so kind to me," she said quietly, "but I will never forget it." Samuel felt something shift in his chest. Over the past 3 weeks, he had grown accustomed to having Theresa around. More than accustomed, if he was honest with himself. He looked forward to seeing her each morning, appreciated the sound of her voice over dinner, and found himself noticing details like the way she hummed while she worked or how she always saved the best scraps for the barn cat. "You are a good person who deserves better than what you have gotten," Samuel said. "That is reason enough." The next few days were tense. Samuel made another trip to town and learned that Pemberton was still around, asking questions and offering money for information. But the people of Beaver were a tight-lipped bunch, especially when it came to outsiders throwing money around. If anyone had seen Theresa, they were not talking. During this time, Samuel and Theresa fell into an even closer rhythm. They worked side by side during the day, and in the evenings they talked more than they had before. Theresa told him about growing up in Colorado, about her parents who had died in a scarlet fever outbreak when she was 17, about making her way to Salt Lake City, and the years she had spent working in various establishments to survive. Samuel told her about his own past, about fighting in the war when he was barely 18, about coming west afterward to escape the memories and start fresh. He told her about the years he had spent drifting before finally settling in Utah and claiming this land. "You ever regret it?" Theresa asked one evening as they sat on his porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. "Being out here alone, I mean." "I used to think alone was what I wanted," Samuel said. "After the war, I did not feel fit for company. But lately I have been thinking that maybe I was just waiting for the right company." She glanced at him, and in the golden light of the setting sun she was beautiful. "Samuel, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I am starting to care about you. More than I should, probably. More than is wise given my situation. But I wanted you to know." Samuel's heart was pounding. "Theresa, I have been feeling the same way. I did not want to say anything because I did not want to pressure you or make you uncomfortable. But since we are being honest, I think about you all the time. I wake up looking forward to seeing you. I go to sleep remembering things you said that made me smile." She reached over and took his hand. Her palm was rough with calluses from the work she had been doing, but her touch was gentle. "What are we going to do about this?" "I think we should see where it goes," Samuel said. "No expectations, no pressure. Just take it one day at a time and see what happens." "I would like that," Theresa said softly. They sat there holding hands until the stars came out, neither of them wanting to break the moment. When they finally said good night, Samuel walked Theresa to the bunkhouse and they stood at her door, neither quite ready to part. "Can I kiss you?" Samuel asked. In answer, Theresa rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. It was a gentle kiss, tentative and sweet, but it sent warmth flooding through Samuel's entire body. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. "Good night, Samuel," she said. "Good night, Theresa." The next morning brought the first real snow of the season, a light dusting that turned the world white and clean. Samuel and Theresa worked together to make sure the animals were secure and that there was enough feed stored in the barn. As they worked, they found excuses to stand close to each other, to touch hands, to exchange smiles that held new meaning. But their happiness was interrupted that afternoon when Samuel spotted a rider approaching the ranch. His stomach sank when he recognized the expensive coat and fine horse. Marcus Pemberton had found them. "Theresa, go inside the house," Samuel said quietly. "Lock the door and do not come out unless I tell you to." "Samuel, I will not hide while you face him alone. Please," he said, and something in his voice made her listen. She squeezed his hand once and then hurried to the house. Samuel waited in the yard as Pemberton rode up and dismounted. Up close, the man was handsome in a polished way, with features that suggested he had never done a day of hard labor in his life. "Mr. Kincaid, is it?" Pemberton said with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I was told you might be able to help me. I am looking for a woman, Theresa Zimmerman. I believe she may be here." "And what makes you think that?" "A merchant in town mentioned seeing you purchase some fabric and women's items recently. Since you are not known to have a wife or family, I thought it might be worth investigating." Samuel silently cursed himself for not being more careful. "I occasionally have female workers. It is none of your concern. If that worker is Theresa, it is very much my concern. She is unwell and needs to come home with me where she can be properly cared for." "She seems perfectly well to me," Samuel said, "and she has made it clear she does not want to go anywhere with you." Pemberton's pleasant expression hardened. "You have been harboring her this whole time. Do you have any idea the trouble you are in? I could have you arrested for kidnapping, for interfering with a domestic situation." "There is no domestic situation. She is not your fiancée, not your wife, not your anything. She is a free woman who has chosen to work here, and you have no legal claim on her." "We will see what the law says about that," Pemberton said. "I have already sent for the territorial marshal. He should be arriving in Beaver within a few days. We will see if your story holds up when the authorities get involved." Samuel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the snow. If Pemberton had connections, he might be able to convince a marshal that Theresa was mentally unstable or that Samuel had coerced her somehow. The law out here could be unpredictable, and money often spoke louder than truth. "Get off my property," Samuel said, "and do not come back." "I will be back," Pemberton said, mounting his horse, "with the law on my side. Enjoy these last few days with your little rescue. They will not last." Samuel watched him ride away, his mind racing. When he was sure Pemberton was gone, he went to the house. Theresa opened the door before he could knock, her face pale. I heard everything, she said. Samuel, I am so sorry. I never wanted this to happen. Do not apologize. We need to think. If he really does have a marshal coming, we need to be prepared. They spent the evening discussing their options. Theresa could run again, but with winter coming, that was increasingly dangerous. They could try to find a lawyer, but the nearest one was in Salt Lake City, and they had no guarantee he would not be in Pemberton's pocket. Or they could stand their ground and hope that the truth would be enough. There is another option, Samuel said slowly. We could get married. Theresa looked at him in shock. What? If you are my wife, Pemberton has no claim on you at all. The law is very clear about that. A husband has authority over a wife's situation, not some random man claiming she is unwell. Samuel, you cannot marry me just to protect me from him. That is not fair to you. What if it is not just to protect you? Samuel said, taking her hands. What if I am asking because I love you? Because over these past weeks, you have become the most important person in my world, because I cannot imagine my life without you in it now. I know it is fast, and I know the circumstances are not ideal, but I also know how I feel. I love you, Theresa. Will you marry me? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you too. I have been so afraid to say it, to let myself feel it, because I did not think I deserved something good after everything that has happened. But yes, Samuel. Yes, I will marry you. They held each other for a long time, and when they finally pulled apart, they were both smiling despite the danger they faced. We need to do this quickly, Samuel said. Before the marshal arrives, the preacher in town owes me a favor. I helped him rebuild his church after a storm last year. He will marry us without asking too many questions. The next morning, they rode to Beaver together. The preacher, a kind older man named Reverend Williams, agreed immediately to perform the ceremony. They were married in the small church with only the preacher and his wife as witnesses. It was simple and rushed, but when Samuel slid his mother's ring onto Theresa's finger and they spoke their vows, it felt more real and meaningful than any elaborate ceremony could have been. You may kiss your bride, Reverend Williams said with a warm smile. Samuel cupped Theresa's face in his hands and kissed her deeply, and in that moment, all the fear and uncertainty faded away. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. They filed the marriage certificate with the town clerk that same day, making sure there was an official record. When they returned to the ranch, Samuel carried Theresa over the threshold of the main house, both of them laughing. You know, Theresa said as he set her down, when I climbed into your hay loft that night, I never imagined this would happen. What did you imagine? I thought I would rest for a few hours, leave at dawn, and eventually freeze to death somewhere between here and California. Instead, I found you, I found home. This is your home now, Samuel said, for as long as you want it to be. Forever then, she said, and kissed him again. They had 3 days of peace before the marshal arrived. They spent that time settling into their new life as husband and wife. Theresa moved her few belongings into the main house, and they rearranged things to make it feel like their home rather than just his. They worked together during the day and spent the evenings learning each other in new ways, talking late into the night about their hopes and dreams for the future. On the 4th day, a hard knock sounded at the door. Samuel opened it to find a tall man with a marshal's badge standing on his porch, Marcus Pemberton just behind him. Samuel Kincaid, the marshal asked. That is right. I am Marshal Garrett Thompson. I have had some concerning reports about a woman being held here against her will. I am going to need to speak with her. My wife is inside, Samuel said calmly. You are welcome to speak with her, though I should warn you that she will not appreciate being accused of being held against her will. Your wife, Pemberton snapped. That is impossible. She was here alone just days ago. "We were married 4 days ago," Samuel said, "by Reverend Williams in Beaver. It is all legally filed with the town clerk if you would like to verify." Marshal Thompson frowned. "Mr. Pemberton, you said this woman was your fiancée." "She was confused," Pemberton said quickly. "She did not know what she was doing. This man clearly took advantage of her vulnerable state." "Why don't we ask the lady herself?" the marshal said. Samuel stepped aside to let them in. Theresa was standing in the center of the room, her spine straight and her chin lifted. She looked every inch the confident rancher's wife, not the frightened fugitive Pemberton had described. "Mrs. Kincaid," Marshal Thompson said, "this man claims you were brought here against your will and that you are not of sound mind to make your own decisions. What do you say to that?" "I say that Marcus Pemberton is a liar and a predator," Theresa said clearly. "I worked in his hotel in Salt Lake City. When I refused his advances, he attempted to force himself on me. I defended myself and fled. I came to this area by my own choice, found work on Mr. Kincaid's ranch by my own choice, and married him by my own choice. I am of perfectly sound mind, and I am exactly where I want to be." "That is not true," Pemberton said, his face reddening. "She is delusional. She imagined my interest in her. I was only trying to help when she had her breakdown." "Did you file any report about her having a breakdown?" the marshal asked. "Did you consult with a doctor about her supposed mental instability?" Pemberton hesitated. "I did not want to embarrass her by making it public." "How convenient," Theresa said coldly. "Marshal, I have witnesses in Salt Lake City who will testify to his harassment of me if necessary. I have scars on my arms from where he grabbed me. I have nothing of the sort from my time here with Samuel, who has been nothing but respectful and kind." Marshal Thompson looked between them, clearly assessing the situation. He had seen enough of the world to recognize truth when he heard it. "Mr. Pemberton," he said, "I do not see any evidence of wrongdoing here. Mrs. Kincaid appears to be exactly what she claims, a married woman living with her husband by her own free will. Unless you have concrete evidence to the contrary, I suggest you return to Salt Lake City and accept that the lady has made her choice." "This is ridiculous," Pemberton sputtered. "I came all this way, spent all this money to find her, and you are just going to take her word over mine." "I am taking the word of a married woman who appears perfectly rational and capable of making her own decisions," Thompson said firmly. "There is nothing more to discuss here." "You will regret this," Pemberton said, looking at Theresa with undisguised hatred. "Both of you will regret this." "Is that a threat?" Samuel asked, his hand moving toward his revolver. "It is a promise," Pemberton said. "Mr. Pemberton, I suggest you leave these people alone," Marshal Thompson said. "I would hate to have to arrest you for threatening behavior. Now I am heading back to town. You can ride with me or you can go your own way, but you are leaving this ranch now." After they left, Samuel and Theresa stood in the silence, processing what had just happened. "Is it really over?" Theresa asked. "I think so," Samuel said. "Thompson seemed like a fair man, and Pemberton does not have any legal standing now that we are married. He might bluster and threaten, but there is nothing he can actually do." Theresa sagged with relief, and Samuel caught her, holding her close. "You were amazing," he said. "The way you stood up to him." "I had you beside me," she said. "That made all the difference." Over the following weeks, they heard through the town gossip that Pemberton had left the area, returning to Salt Lake City empty-handed. The news brought a sense of closure that allowed Theresa to finally let go of the fear she had been carrying. As winter settled in properly, blanketing the ranch in snow, Samuel and Theresa built their life together. They worked hard during the short days and spent the long evenings by the fire, talking and laughing, and simply enjoying each other's company. The physical side of their marriage grew naturally from the deep, emotional connection they shared, and they discovered joy in each other that neither had experienced before. Christmas came, and Theresa insisted on making it special. She cooked an elaborate meal and made decorations from pine boughs and berries. Samuel surprised her with a music box he had ordered from back east, a delicate thing that played a waltz when wound. "It is beautiful," she said, tears in her eyes as she opened it. "But you should not have spent the money." "You are my wife," Samuel said. "I wanted to give you something beautiful. You deserve beautiful things." "I have everything I need right here," she said, taking his hand. On Christmas night, as they lay together in bed listening to the wind howl outside, Theresa said, "Samuel, I am with child." He sat up, looking at her in the lamplight. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be. I think I am about 2 months along." Samuel felt a wave of emotion so powerful it nearly overwhelmed him. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" she asked, a note of uncertainty in her voice. "Happy does not begin to cover it," he said, kissing her. "I am overjoyed, terrified but overjoyed." "I am terrified too," she admitted, "but also excited. I always wanted children, but I never thought I would have the chance, not after everything that happened." "You are going to be an amazing mother," Samuel said, "and we are going to give this child everything we did not have. Love, safety, stability. A real home." Spring came slowly, the snow melting gradually to reveal the brown earth beneath. As the land came back to life, so did Theresa's body, rounding with the growing child. Samuel was protective to the point of being overbearing, insisting she not lift anything heavy or work too hard. "I am pregnant, not broken," she would say with exasperation, but secretly she loved his concern. They made a trip to town to see the doctor, a practical woman named Dr. Sarah Mills, who had come west from Boston 5 years earlier. She examined Theresa and declared her healthy and the baby developing well. "You should deliver sometime in late July or early August," Dr. Mills said. "I will come out to your ranch when the time comes. Send someone to fetch me when the pains start." As summer approached, Samuel worked to get the ranch in order so he could focus on Theresa and the baby when the time came. He hired a young man from town named Jack to help with the heavy work, giving him the bunkhouse that Theresa had first stayed in. Theresa spent her time preparing for the baby, sewing tiny clothes and blankets, setting up a cradle that Samuel built from smooth pine. She and Samuel would sit together in the evenings, his hand on her swollen belly, feeling the baby kick and move. "What should we name him?" Samuel asked. "Or her. If it is a boy, I like the name Thomas," Theresa said, "after my father, and if it is a girl, maybe Grace." "Thomas and Grace," Samuel said. "Both good, strong names." The baby came on a sweltering August night. Samuel sent Jack racing to town for Dr. Mills while he stayed with Theresa, holding her hand and trying not to show how frightened he was. Theresa labored for hours, her face slick with sweat, and Samuel felt utterly helpless. Dr. Mills arrived and took over with calm efficiency. "You are doing fine, Theresa," she said. "Just keep breathing through the pains. The baby is positioned well. It should not be much longer now." She was right. Just as the sun was rising, filling the bedroom with golden light, Theresa gave one final push and their child entered the world with a loud, healthy cry. "It is a boy," Dr. Mills announced, wrapping the baby in a clean blanket and placing him in Theresa's arms. "A big, healthy boy." Samuel looked down at his son, at the tiny face and the shock of dark hair, and felt his heart expand in a way he did not know was possible. "Hello, Thomas," he said softly. "Welcome to the world." Theresa was crying and laughing at the same time, her exhaustion forgotten as she gazed at their son. "He is perfect. Samuel, he is absolutely perfect." "He looks like you," Samuel said, touching the baby's tiny hand. Little fingers wrapped around his finger with surprising strength. "He has your nose," Theresa said. Dr. Mills smiled as she cleaned up. "You have a beautiful family, Mr. and Mrs. Kincaid. Take good care of each other." The next months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and profound joy. Thomas was a good baby, healthy and strong, and he thrived. Samuel discovered depths of love he had not known he was capable of. Every smile, every small sound, every milestone filled him with wonder. Theresa bloomed in motherhood. She was patient and nurturing, but also strong and practical when needed. Samuel would often find her in the rocking chair by the window, nursing Thomas and singing softly, and the sight would make him pause whatever he was doing just to watch them. One evening, when Thomas was about 6 months old, Samuel came in from the fields to find Theresa sitting at the table, looking at a letter with tears streaming down her face. "What is wrong?" he asked, alarmed. "Nothing is wrong," she said, smiling through her tears. "Look at this." It is from Reverend Williams. He says Marcus Pemberton was arrested in Salt Lake City. Several women came forward with complaints about his behavior, including forced confinement and assault. He's going to prison for a long time. Samuel sat down heavily, relief washing over him. "So he can never threaten you again?" "Never," Theresa said. "It is really over. After all this time, it is finally over." That night they celebrated quietly, just the three of them. Samuel held Thomas while Theresa cooked dinner, and they ate together as a family, talking about the future without fear for the first time. Years passed, good years full of hard work and simple pleasures. The ranch prospered under their joint care, growing larger and more profitable. They added more cattle, built a bigger barn, and improved the house. When Thomas was 3, Theresa had a daughter they named Grace, just as they had planned. She had Theresa's dark hair and Samuel's gray eyes, and she was as spirited as her brother was serious. 2 years after Grace came another son, Benjamin, who was the calmest and happiest baby Samuel had ever seen. Samuel and Theresa's love deepened with each passing year. They still worked side by side on the ranch, still talked late into the night, still found joy in the simple act of being together. The passion of their early romance had matured into something even richer, a partnership built on trust, respect, and genuine affection. On their 10th anniversary, Samuel surprised Theresa with a trip to Salt Lake City. It was the first time she had been back since fleeing all those years ago, and she was nervous at first. But with Samuel beside her and knowing Pemberton was locked away, she found she could finally see the city without fear. They stayed in a nice hotel, attended the theater, and bought gifts for the children. On their last evening, they had dinner at a fancy restaurant, something neither of them had ever done before. "Can you believe it has been 10 years?" Theresa said, looking beautiful in a new dress Samuel had bought her. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime," Samuel said. "Other times it feels like just yesterday that I found you in my hay loft." "You saved my life that night," Theresa said. "If you had turned me away, I do not know what would have happened to me." "You saved mine too," Samuel said. "I did not realize how empty my life was until you filled it. You and the children, you are everything to me." "I love you, Samuel Kincaid," she said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you, Theresa Kincaid," he said. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They returned home to find the children happy and healthy, having been looked after by Jack and his wife, who now lived in a small house they had built on the far edge of the ranch property. The ranch had become more than just a property. It had become a community, a place where people looked out for each other. As the children grew, Samuel and Theresa worked to give them opportunities they themselves had never had. They hired a teacher to come to the ranch twice a week to give lessons. They encouraged curiosity and learning, taking the children into town for cultural events whenever possible. Thomas grew into a responsible young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. He spent hours working alongside Samuel, learning every aspect of ranching, and it became clear he would one day take over the operation. Grace was bright and bold, always pushing boundaries and asking questions. She had her mother's determination and her father's practicality, a combination that meant she would do well at whatever she set her mind to. Benjamin was the gentle soul of the family, more interested in books and ideas than cattle and horses, though he did his share of the work without complaint. He talked about becoming a doctor someday, and Theresa and Samuel encouraged the dream. On a warm summer evening when Thomas was 20, Grace 17, and Benjamin 15, the family gathered on the porch after supper. It had become a tradition over the years, this time together at the end of the day. "I have been thinking," Thomas said, "about expanding the cattle operation north toward that creek property that borders our land." "What do you think, Pa?" Samuel smiled. His son had good instincts. "I think that is a sound plan. We can discuss the details and maybe ride out there tomorrow to look at it properly." "I have been thinking too," Grace said. "There is a teacher's college in Denver. I would like to apply." Theresa and Samuel exchanged glances. They had known this day would come, but it was still hard to imagine Grace so far away. "That is a big step," Theresa said carefully. "Are you certain that is what you want?" "I am certain," Grace said. "I want to be a teacher, a real one, not just someone who knows a little about everything. And then I want to come back here and start a proper school in Beaver. The children in this area deserve better than the scattered education they get now." "Then we will support you," Samuel said, his throat tight with pride and impending loss. "Whatever you need." Benjamin looked up from the book he was reading. "And I want to study medicine. I know that is expensive, but I have been saving money from helping Dr. Mills with her rounds, and I thought maybe when I am 18, "You will go to medical school," Theresa interrupted. "Your father and I have been setting money aside for all of you. We want you to have choices we did not have." The children looked at each other in surprise, then at their parents. "You have been saving for us?" Thomas asked. "Of course," Samuel said. "What is the point of building all this if not to give you opportunities? Thomas, if you want to expand the ranch, we will invest in that. Grace, if you want to go to college, we will pay for it. Benjamin, if you want to be a doctor, we will make it happen. We believe in all of you." Grace got up and hugged her mother, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. I promise I will make you proud." "You already do," Theresa said, holding her daughter close. "Every single day." The years continued to pass, each one bringing changes and challenges, but also joy. Grace went to college in Denver and returned 3 years later with her teaching certificate and a husband, a kind young man named David who was also a teacher. Together, they opened a school in Beaver that quickly became known throughout the region for its excellence. Benjamin went to medical school in St. Louis and returned as Dr. Benjamin Kincaid, setting up practice in Beaver alongside the aging Dr. Mills. He met a young woman named Catherine who worked as a nurse, and they married in the same small church where Samuel and Theresa had spoken their vows all those years ago. Thomas took over more and more of the ranch operations as Samuel got older, though Samuel never fully retired. He loved the work too much, the feel of the land and the rhythm of the seasons. He and Thomas made a good team, with Thomas bringing new ideas and energy while Samuel provided wisdom and experience. Grandchildren came, filling the ranch with noise and laughter once again. Grace and David had 3 children, Benjamin and Catherine had two, and Thomas married a smart, capable woman named Elizabeth, who gave him 4 children over the course of their marriage. Samuel and Theresa watched their family grow with deep satisfaction. The scared, desperate woman who had climbed into his hay loft so many years ago was now a confident matriarch, surrounded by children and grandchildren who adored her. The lonely, battle-scarred man who had offered shelter to a stranger was now a respected patriarch, whose opinion was sought on everything from cattle prices to family disputes. They grew old together, their bodies wearing down but their minds staying sharp and their love never diminishing. They still talked every evening, still held hands when they walked, still looked at each other with the same affection that had been there from the beginning. On their 40th anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There was a huge dinner with everyone's favorite foods, music and dancing, and speeches from the children and grandchildren about what Samuel and Theresa meant to them. When it was quiet again and everyone had gone home or to bed, Samuel and Theresa sat on the porch together, looking out at the land they had built their life on. 40 years, Theresa said wonderingly. Do you remember what you said to me that first night, when I told you I would leave at dawn? I told you that you were safe here, Samuel said, and I meant it. You gave me so much more than safety, Theresa said. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me love I did not think I deserved and a life I did not dare dream of. I think of that terrified girl climbing into a stranger's hay loft, and I can hardly believe she became me. She was always you, Samuel said. She just needed a chance to become who she was meant to be. And I think of the lonely man I was before you came, and I realize I was only half alive. You made me whole. Theresa leaned her head on his shoulder. I would do it all again. Every hard moment, every challenge, every fear. I would walk every mile from Salt Lake City all over again if I knew it would lead me to you. And I would open that barn door again every time, Samuel said, knowing that the woman in my hay loft would become my whole world. They sat there as the stars came out, comfortable in the silence that comes from decades of knowing each other completely. The air was cool and sweet, carrying the scent of sage and grass. Somewhere in the distance, a cow lowed. Closer, in the house behind them, they could hear the murmur of their grandchildren settling down for the night. Several more years passed peacefully. Samuel and Theresa aged gracefully, their steps slower but their hearts no less full. They spent their days quietly, enjoying small pleasures, morning coffee together, walks around the property they still thought of as their greatest accomplishment, visits from children and grandchildren who never seemed to tire of their company. When Samuel was 72 and Theresa was 68, he began having trouble with his heart. Dr. Benjamin tried everything he knew, but some things could not be fixed. Samuel took the news calmly, having lived a full life and having no regrets. I am not afraid, he told Theresa one evening as they sat together. I have lived a good life, longer and happier than I ever expected. My only regret is leaving you. You are not leaving me yet, Theresa said firmly, though her eyes were wet with tears. We still have time. And they did. More than a year of mornings and evenings, of family gatherings and quiet moments. Samuel made sure all his affairs were in order, that the ranch transition to Thomas would be smooth, that Theresa would be provided for. On a spring morning much like the one when he had first found Theresa in his hay loft, 44 years earlier, Samuel passed away peacefully in his sleep with Theresa beside him. She held his hand as his breathing slowed and finally stopped, and though her heart was breaking, she was grateful they had been together until the very end. The funeral was attended by what seemed like half the territory. Samuel had been well loved and respected, and people came from miles around to pay their respects. Theresa stood strong through it all, supported by her children and grandchildren, accepting condolences with grace. After everyone had left and the house was quiet again, Theresa sat on the porch alone for the first time in decades. She felt the weight of Samuel's absence like a physical thing, a hollow place where he should have been. But as she sat there, she also felt surrounded by everything they had built together. The ranch stretched out before her, prosperous and beautiful. The house behind her was full of evidence of their life. Photographs, furniture they had chosen together, the music box he had given her that first Christmas. Their children were all settled and happy, their grandchildren healthy and thriving. "We did good, Samuel," she said softly to the evening air. "We did real good." Theresa lived another 8 years, surrounded by family and love. She never remarried, never wanted to. Samuel had been the love of her life, and she was content with the memories they had made together. She spent her remaining years helping with the grandchildren, tending a large garden and writing down the story of her life for future generations. She wanted them to know, she wrote, that sometimes the darkest moments lead to the greatest blessings. That kindness to strangers can change lives. That love can find you when you least expect it, in a hay loft in Utah territory, and transform everything. When Theresa passed away peacefully at the age of 76, she was laid to rest beside Samuel in the small cemetery outside Beaver. Their children and grandchildren gathered once more, and this time there were even great-grandchildren, tiny ones who would grow up hearing stories about the couple who had started it all. Thomas stood at his mother's grave, his own hair now streaked with gray, and held his wife's hand tightly. "They had quite a love story," Elizabeth said softly. "They really did," Thomas agreed. "From the night Ma climbed into that hay loft and told Pa she would leave at dawn, right up until the end, they showed us all what true partnership looks like." Grace stood nearby with David, their children and grandchildren around them. "I am glad Ma wrote everything down," she said. "The story of how they met, how they fell in love, how they built this life. Our descendants should know where they came from." "Speaking of which," Benjamin said, one arm around Catherine, "I think we should make it a tradition. Every year on their anniversary, we gather at the ranch and someone reads from Ma's journal, so the story lives on." The family agreed, and so a new tradition was born. Every year on that October date when Samuel had found Theresa in his hay loft, the Kincaid family gathered at the ranch. The property stayed in the family for generations, passing from Thomas to his children and beyond. Each new generation heard the story of their ancestors, who had met under the most unlikely circumstances, and built something lasting from it. The ranch prospered over the decades, growing and changing with the times but always remaining in Kincaid hands. The town of Beaver grew too, but the family's connection to it remained strong. There was always a Kincaid on the town council, a Kincaid teaching at the school Grace had founded, a Kincaid practicing medicine at the clinic Benjamin had expanded. And at the heart of it all was the story of Samuel and Theresa, the rancher and the woman in his hay loft who had said she would leave at dawn, but instead stayed for a lifetime. Their love story became part of the family's identity, a reminder that courage, kindness, and hope could overcome even the darkest circumstances. The small bunkhouse where Theresa had first stayed was preserved and maintained, a testament to humble beginnings. The main house was expanded and modernized over the years, but the original rooms where Samuel and Theresa had built their life together were kept as close to the original as possible. In the barn, in the very same hay loft where it all began, a small plaque was mounted on the wall. It read simply, "Here began a great love story. October 1876, Samuel and Theresa Kincaid. Visitors to the ranch, whether family or the occasional guest, would often climb up to the loft and stand there, imagining that autumn night when a desperate woman seeking shelter met a lonely man willing to offer it. They would think about how a few words, "I will leave at dawn," had led to decades of love, a thriving family, and a legacy that continued long after both parties had passed. The music box Samuel had given Theresa that first Christmas was passed down through the family, each generation treasuring it and the story behind it. The ring Samuel had placed on Theresa's finger, his mother's ring, was worn by each eldest daughter on her wedding day before being returned to its place of honor in the family. The journal Theresa had written in her later years, detailing their life together, was carefully preserved. Reading it, generations of Kincaids learned not just facts but feelings, understanding the depth of love their ancestors had shared. "I was terrified that night I climbed into the hay loft," Theresa had written. "I thought my life was over, that I would never feel safe or happy again. I could not have imagined that I was actually at the beginning of the greatest adventure of my life. Samuel gave me shelter that night, but over the years he gave me so much more. He gave me respect when I had been treated as worthless. He gave me partnership when I had only known subjugation. He gave me love when I thought I was unlovable. And together we built something that will outlast us both. If I could go back and tell that frightened girl in the hay loft anything, I would tell her, stay. Do not leave at dawn. The man climbing that ladder is your future, your hope, your heart. He is worth staying for." And Samuel had written too, though less extensively. But in his simpler words was no less love. "I was alone before Theresa. I did not know I was alone because I had nothing to compare it to. But after she came, I understood what I had been missing. She made me better, made my life mean something beyond just survival. Finding her in my barn was the best luck I ever had. Loving her was the best decision I ever made. If I had turned her away that night, sent her on her way at dawn like she planned, I would have lost everything that mattered. Thank God I asked her to stay." The ranch continued to be a gathering place for the family through all the seasons of life. Weddings were held there, in the meadow where wildflowers bloomed each spring. Babies were brought there to be introduced to the land that was their heritage. The elderly came there to spend their final days surrounded by beauty and family. And always, always, there was the story. The story of how it all began, with a woman in a hay loft who said she would leave at dawn and a man who convinced her to stay. It was a story of second chances, of love growing from kindness, of building something lasting from the briefest of meetings. As the sun set on the ranch each evening, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, it was easy to imagine Samuel and Theresa still there in spirit, sitting on their porch, holding hands, watching over the family and the land they had loved so well. Their love story had ended in the mortal sense, but in every other way it lived on. The legacy of that October night in 1876 rippled forward through time, touching lives that had not yet been lived, shaping futures that had not yet unfolded. Because two people had been brave enough to trust each other, to build together, to love despite fear and uncertainty, countless others had been given the gift of family, of belonging, of home. And it had all started so simply. A woman seeking shelter, a man willing to provide it, and the magic that happened when kindness met courage and desperation met hope. From those humble beginnings in a hay loft in Utah Territory grew a love that transcended time, a family that spanned generations, and a legacy that would never be forgotten. The ranch stood as it had for over a century, a testament to what two people could build when they chose love over fear, togetherness over loneliness, hope over despair. And in the barn, in that hay loft where it all began, the plaque remained, quietly telling its simple truth to anyone who climbed up to see it. Here began a great love story. Here, two lives intertwined and became one. Here, at dawn, instead of leaving, love arrived to stay forever.